Hello, welcome to Win Some, Lose More. My name is Dieter Loosemore. I'm joined again by my brother Rick for the final installment of the Two Loose Top 50 2024. We are at number 10, to number one, top 10 games of all time right now. We're playing the fun box game. I have a stack of them here. I imagine you have a stack of some of them there. I don't know what's in all of your 10. Ah, what's number 10? Tell me number 10.
Yeah, I mean my one to five are actually the same as they were last year, just a different order. And then only one of the 10 to 6 was in the 10 last year.
I don't think we're going to have any same list crossover.
I don't think we are. I thought about this. I was like, right, I was literally getting shoved on. Like, I don't think any of this is gonna be on yours,
Uh,
which is fun.
Fun. First time, I think.
Fun. All right, number 10.
Oh,
Yeah. The game my mother said, your mother said, hey, that's I can't get it in focus. It's Scout. The game our mother said was better than No Thanks. Totally different game, but I think she's like, oh, it's cards with numbers and colors. This is a trick taking game where you have to beat one another's tricks by number of cards you have, with straights and sets and that kind of thing. The trick of the thing, ho ho, is that the cards are double sided. So you've got a one here and a nine there, and the other way around is a nine and a one. And you got a hand of cards. The first thing you do, you choose which way up your hand is going to go. From there, a bit like Bonanza, you can't change the order of the cards. And so, say you've got a nine here and a nine there and another nine there. You're like, oh, can I get rid of that card and that card and that card to make a set of three?
hmm.
And so you look at the top for ah I don't know if I've got anything here. I don't know if I've got anything there. And there's sort of an economic, can I beat you? Can I beat you? There's opportunities to like break the rules a tiny bit, like by drawing off someone. And the main thing is that puzzle of just like, ooh, how can I make the most of one side of this deck of cards, of this hand of cards? And it's kind of great. It's just kind of magic, kind of. I don't know. It just does something that I don't know any other games that do, and I just really, really like that thing. And it's probably one that my wife is constantly disappointed doesn't play well at two players. She's like, "Can we play Scout? Can we play?" I'm like, "No," because. And then as soon as someone says, "Oh, someone's here. Can we play Scout?" Sure. Yeah, I think it's neat. Do you like? Have you played this?
You showed it to me.
Yeah.
So I've only played it once, so it didn't qualify for my thing. I I've mentioned it on a couple of yours. I got it. It's not a puzzle I'm good at. And that might just be from playing once because I
Mhm,
like
mhm,
trick
mhm.
taking games. The crew was in my list for a long time. I'm excited to try Cat in the Box that you mentioned
Yeah, sure.
previously. And I've been excited to try this one for that kind of niche that it fits in with No Thanks and that kind of just very small box thing. Is it
Mhm.
Oink? I tend to like Oink.
It's Oink. Yeah, it's
Game.
Oink.
Um, and it didn't hit for me for whatever reason. It might just be I play it again and go, oh, okay, it's this kind of casual. I don't need to be worried so much about the puzzle.
Mm,
Just have fun with it. But I did badly, and
mm,
sometimes that bothers me. Sometimes it doesn't. With this, it made me go, yeah, it's fine.
sure.
But people say that about a lot of the games that I love, so that's okay. It would be boring if we're all the same. My number 10, I've played quite a few times this year, introduced it to at least two new people. It has consistently been around the top 10. Where was it last year? It was number 8. So always kind of this area. Oh, double check facts before I say them. My second favorite two-player only game of all time, Onitama.
Hmm.
Excellent. Um, Chess is fine. If you want to play that, it's great, and I will happily join you and lose at it. That's fine. This similarly has a grid with pawns that you're trying to take other stuff, but your moves are dictated by a set of cards that come out, and just that immediate. It's a 5 minute game of okay, how do I use these combinations of cards, these moves to do what I want to do, either get your king to the other side or take their king. Very simple stuff. Um, but whatever move you use passes to your opponent. So actually, I've played whole games where I only use one of the cards and hold the other one in my hand for the entire game because I do not want my opponent to have it. And so just that very simple puzzle, I've played it with 6-year-olds, I've played it with 60-year-olds. Like it just works and is a tactile experience. I know that's
Mm,
it's a silly thing to say, but like we both played it digitally and both came away going, sure.
yeah.
Um, but I play it physically. I play it across the table for somebody. I love introducing it to people and watching their. I beat them the first time because I'm going to, because it's that kind of thing. And they finish the first game and go, oh, okay, let's go. And you just
Mm.
play 5 or 6 times in a row. Just what about this combination? What about this combination? Oh, you did that thing. And then I don't win every time because once you get it, yes, there's skill in kind of mapping out how the moves can go together once you get to know them a little bit. But at its core, incredibly simple and a heck of a lot of fun. My number 10, Onitama.
And you're right about the tactility thing. I think you keep saying you had this rule of like you won't count it if you played it once. I don't count games that I've only played digitally, and this is that. And like you say, it just was like, yeah, sure,
Yeah,
but yeah, I imagine in person would be a lot better.
yeah.
All right, my number nine, which was 18 last year, so
Ooh.
I like it twice as much as I did, and it's War of the Ring, the card game, and I've got the bad guy box
Ooh,
because I only ever
interesting.
seem to play as the bad guys. Hmm?
No, carry on, carry on, carry on, carry on, carry on, carry on.
Okay, okay. This is, as Deep said, I think on the last list, a team game. I don't have loads of team games. Team games are great. Team games are great, and it has that wonderful thing of because you're playing cooperative with your team, but you don't want to share information to your opposite team, so it fixes some of the problems of co-op games, which is that one person takes control or whatever. Because as soon as someone does that, you're telegraphing to the other team what you're going to do. So it requires a sense of independence as well as interdependence. And obviously, it's a theme I love. And, there are loads of things about this game that if they were in a game that wasn't a theme I liked, I probably wouldn't care because I am generally a board gamer and not a card gamer. And D is much more cardy than I am. You exhaust cards, you put them into things like that. I wouldn't be interested in, but I don't think maybe it is just a theme, but I don't think it feels quite as card gamey as some other card games.
I agree.
You would agree?
Yeah, for sure.
Um, Basically, you have a hand of cards, and everyone has a deck of 30-ish. There's a couple of promos, but 30 basically cards, and you've got 4 or 5 cards in your hand, and you probably want to play the cards either into a battle or a path, because the ring itself is making its way by the Lord of the Rings, by the way, a path down to Mordor from the Shire. And you put in characters and armies into those things, and maybe equipping them with, swords and bows and what have you, or you put them into reserve. But the real catch of the thing is you've got 4 or 5 cards. To play a card costs you a card.
Hmm,
You cycle it, which means you recycle it. It's gonna go into a discard pile that you're gonna cycle around. There is another discard pile which is they dead, they ain't coming back. But you cycle it and you recycle it. So immediately you've got 4 or 5 cards, and you're like, I'm gonna get 2 goes. I'm only gonna get 2 goes. I like all of these cards. I mean, sometimes there's like can only ever be used right at the end of the game. All right, that's easy enough. But a lot of the time it's like, I want to do all of this stuff, and I can't do all of this stuff. And then you're looking around at each other and going, if I discard this, is he going to be able to win that fight for us? Because I can maybe put in one thing. I hope he can put in another thing. And that you're playing in battlegrounds where not everyone can be involved all of the time. How do they deal with that? Some stuff goes in reserve. Sometimes when it's in reserve, it's got special powers. No one ever feels like they're out of a round,
hmm.
really. Even when you sort of like down to one card and you're just passing like, when should I go? When should I? It's a game of timing. It's a game of, oh, when's the right time just to do this one thing? Let me just wait. I can pass. I'll come back in later. I'll just no, no, no. Now I ruin your life. It's that kind of game. And yeah, I have got the expansion. I have now got it on, so it's a three versus three game rather than just two for two, and I think it's fabulous at six player. Yeah, I'm going to struggle to see myself playing this at four again because I think it's great, and also it's a faff to undo all the cards and stuff. I'd be happy to play it two versus two, and I definitely would. But I'm like, oh, six people? Have we got six people that could? Do you like Lord of the Rings? I know what we're going to do tonight. Yeah, it's great, and I'm pleased you liked it too.
And it's such a silly little extra thing, but that paying a card for a card. I like games like Race for the Galaxy where everything's cards and you
Mhm.
play for cards. But that whole tension you mentioned of having that one card that you can burn forever from the game, one card from the top of your deck to play that one card that you've been holding on to, just that little allowance. Oh boy, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just full of those tiny things that make me go, yeah,
And then the thematic twist of saying like, but if you turned over a hobbit, hey, they don't die anyway. And so you're just praying that it's like, would it be something that doesn't die? Yeah,
great.
yeah, just full of lovely little thematic and mechanical twists that yeah, it's a joy.
Um, I feel bad about my number nine now because I'm so excited by that. Um, but this is consistently been in top 20, usually top 10, sometimes drops out a little bit depending if I've played it. I have played it again, taught somebody new this year. My actual favorite two-player game of all time.
Hmm.
Targi, so good. The absolute opposite end of game to War of the Ring in terms of kind of theme and that story and that excitement that we've just been talking about. This is very. I'm just quietly think about what I want to do kind of thing. You're just building up a card tableau, but it's one of the best twists on worker placement that I still have not seen anywhere else
Hmm.
of you're placing workers on the outside of a
Yeah,
grid, and so you get the
yeah.
places you put on, but also where those axes intersect, and
Hmm.
that's so fascinating to me. And there's one spot that all it does is let you change where that position is actually. So it didn't matter where you intersected, you could still move it to get the thing you actually wanted, but
Hmm.
you can't place opposite somebody else. So you're constantly blocking each other. So almost that kind of Cold War, what am I trying to figure out that they're after to block you from doing that thing, but actually they had three backup plans to go after this other thing. It just always works for me. And it always consistently plays in about an hour. Sometimes the game, there are 16 rounds, or when somebody has completed their 12 card grid, and it doesn't seem to matter which way the game ends, it plays in about the same amount of time,
Hmm.
which surprises me. You'd think one would drag on or whatever. It tends to be an hour and you're just committing to that. And that's a nice
Hmm.
length game for how crunchy this is. It's a nice level of I feel like I've played a full game. The
Hmm.
satisfaction I might get from a 2.5 hour game that I was constantly engaged with, but I'm rarely constantly engaged in a 2.5 hour game. This condenses that into just an hour and just consistently engaged, consistently fun because it matters what each of you do all of the time. And those cards then give you like, oh, from now on, this thing's slightly cheaper. Just these tiny little things that go, oh, I'm building up a cool thing. So yeah, so much of it works for me that it just will stay in my collection
Hmm.
probably for as long as I have one. Targi, number nine.
Yeah. Well, you felt a little bit bad about your number nine because you're excited about my number nine. I'm a little bit disappointed in my number eight. Some of this is the vagaries of whatever it's called, pub meeple that we use. But it's also true that Scythe Earth dropped out of the 10 because of lack of play. This has been in my 10 as long as we've done the list. It's been as high as five, it was as low as nine last year, but I still like it and played it this year. Is Power Grid. It's an economic game. I like economic games. It just the daddy, the granddaddy, I suppose, of economic kind of like route building, I guess connection building game that yeah, I just have a lot of fun with and just continue to have a lot of fun with, even though it's like I think 21 years old now. It's a definitely an old boy now comparatively, but it's just hanging on in there. And like I say, it's not all about how much you play games because I would be, there'd be kids games that would be much higher on the list if it was just purely pay time. But the fact that I took it to a games night and we played it and I went, yeah, it's great. And then I went to another games night. I was like, I still want to take that because I really enjoy it. And someone else who'd been at that games night was like, can we play that one again? That's great. And you know, I feel bad for Scythe. I feel bad for Earth. They've dropped out of the 10. But sometimes just games get played, which probably means they're good games and people like playing them. And Power Grid is that.
Yeah. Uh, sure. My number seven.
I know it's not for you.
Get to that. My number eight, let the fanboydom commence, was new last year. The expansion came out. There's parts of it that I don't care about in the slightest, but the rest of it is here's just more stuff, and the more stuff is cool, and it keeps being cool, and I keep paying with lots of people. I have to pull back because it's a big box. Expeditions, in the Scythe universe, so same artist, same world that they've created. Yes, there's weird, like, oh, here's some kind of corruption thing that's tentacles. I don't know. I don't care. I don't care. It's not something I like particularly, and I don't really. I'm still not settled on whether it works or not in this world because it's not what I expected from this world. They can do what they want with their world. It's their world. But boy, do I find the system so satisfying. It takes that action selection system from Scythe that Rick mentioned last time, where you just move your little piece and do the things. This is the same thing, but you move a piece and do everything else. That's the twist on it. But then rest turns. Oh boy. I like games we talked about. Essentially, Spice Road I mentioned last time, where one of your actions that you can do is just pick everything up. I don't think I mentioned it, but that is one of the four actions is just pick everything up. And in those kinds of games, that just sets you up to be able to do everything again. In expeditions, yes, you do a rest turn and it resets all the cards that you've used, but then your next turn you get to do everything. So you constantly throughout the game, you suddenly get to do these epic turns where you get to do so much. And I'm excited for what comes next. If anything, if nothing comes next, this is a great full game that I will keep playing like this. But if there's more, I want it. I want to see what it is. I want to see what new things I get to explore. I would love new tiles, new places to take to go and explore and see what's on them and see what the powers are and all those crazy stuff. It doesn't work for a lot of people, and I'm totally okay with that because
Yeah.
it's actually quite almost dull in what it's trying to do. There's no great engine building, like consistent progression to this almighty moment. It's I build this thing up. Well, now I have to build this thing up. Now I have to build this thing up to even finish the game, let alone win it. And that doesn't sit well with some people, and that's okay. That does bother me sometimes, but I sit and play and go, I've had so much fun. And just the sheer, no, not sheer, the opposite, just the very simple system of just moving that thing around to do these different actions. And what's the puzzle of how, well, if I do these two next time, because you have to move it, you can't do the same two next time. How do I manage the next 3 or 4 turns to do the thing that I want to do? Or do I rest now to do it all next time? And it's just super satisfying for me. I love it. Expeditions.
Yeah, a couple of things on that. I think I agree with you about the theming thing. For me, that it feels a bit like it feels like splitting at hairs, but like when they introduce magic into like a superhero universe,
Sure.
it's like I
Couple.
know this is already fantastical, but that just feels like a cheat. It's that sort of it's one step beyond for me. It doesn't obey the rules in which it exists. I don't know. For me, the other thing is you talk about rest turns. I really like rest turns. I was like, oh yeah, it's like a game. What did I talk about? Actually, Obsession. I think I talked about last time. It has a rest turn thing.
Yes.
With the expansion, actually, with the upstairs downstairs, they've they've improved that rest action, and it elevates everything because those turns are just it just ooh okay, I can do a really cool thing if I do things at the right time. It then brings that element in. So games that can manufacture those moments, they're really smart. I like that a lot. So yeah, no, I'd love to try it. I keep humming and hawing on whether I should get it, but I'm sure you'll teach me at some point. All right, from a game that's not for everyone, for a game that is for everyone, and is for me, like it was for you, the highest it's ever been on my list is Ticket to Ride. This is the first time it's ever been in the top 10. I'm really struggling with my focus today. Um, Ticket to Ride Europe is the best looking one. It's beautiful. It's probably the best one I've played. I really like the UK one. I like getting the engines, building up the powers. But on the whole, just pick up some trains, play some trains, get some routes, race each other, and just have a lot of fun. It's a classic for a reason
Yeah.
because it's brilliant. Play Ticket to Ride if you haven't. The end.
From one of the best looking games in our combined top tens to one of the worst looking games in our combined top tens, it dropped out of the 10 last year. I want to say
Yes.
it was number 27 last year. And that's because I hadn't played it in like 2 years. And then somebody at the group was like, just bring anything, whatever you want. I gave them a selection. They're like, fine, we'll try this. It's people talk about it. Um, my Power Grid equivalent, Concordia. Um, Similar,
Idiots.
and this is the best looking bit of it, honestly.
Yeah.
It is. I actually don't mind the aesthetic of the game. It's nothing like this. But it
No.
it looks old, but it's supposed to, so it kind of works for me. Um, Similar kind of route expansion, building things to move around the board to have some control over stuff. Um, but it has the river mechanic, which I love in like Small World and Century Spice Road, where the thing furthest away is cheapest and they get more expensive. But every time you take one, everything moves along, so it will get cheaper. But when do you buy it? Because someone might take it from you, and so it's that kind of thing combined with very simple, if you've only played classic games before and don't really like gaming, this might be a thing that is familiar enough to you, but done in a new way that you go, oh, actually, this can be fun and clever without just rolling some dice and seeing what happens. Um, it feels familiar and yet still quite fresh. It's similarly very old. It's at least 10 years old, I think, probably older. Um, and just worked. The thing that people miss on their first game of it is that the cards you buy are your scoring potential. What you do on the
Mhm.
board is what you score, but the cards are the multipliers of scoring those things. And so
Yes.
each of the different Roman gods scores in a different, like for colonists on the board, for the different types of cities that you've settled in, all the boring stuff. But it just works so well together. And the people that I taught were like, I sure I get it. Like it's good. And it just reminded me how much I love it. And we played 3 player on the small map, so it was very tight and a bit more aggressive. Sometimes you can play on a bigger map and just let people go where they go because it gets more expensive to settle where somebody already else has. And it just so you can kind of gauge and adjust the game to suit the group to some
Mhm.
degree. And it just as you feel like, oh, this might be starting to drag, it's done. Like it always just hits that point of if it was any
Right.
longer, it would outstay its welcome, but it's
Mhm.
exactly the right length
Nice.
right now. Um, a classic again, not to the extreme of Ticket to Ride, that is a true classic, but for me, for that midweight Euro, um, just keeps working. And so it's back in the top 10. Concordia at number 7.
Yeah, I really must try this. All right. My highest new game comes in at number 6.
You can see, this is why I can't figure out your top 10. What's a new
I
game
have said,
be in the top 10?
I have said that this year I have learned that I like race games. I have said this year that I have learned that I like Reiner Knizia.
Oh,
Friends,
snap!
I love El Dorado.
Wow!
Quest for El Dorado is great. I bought this when I was high as a kite because I was off sick for a week and Ravensburger had a really good deal on it. And I was like, yeah, I'll buy that. You know, one of those you wake up in the morning like, your order is confirmed. I was like, my what? You know, I'd seen a lot about it. I knew that the Vincent Dutrait art was nice, but I was like, sure, yeah, I'll try it one day. Oh boy, this is great. And I really wish I could focus because this is really pretty. Um, yeah, so this is a deck builder and a really sort of pure deck builder, not like what did we talk about earlier? Great Western Trail or even Arnak or Dune and that kind of thing. This really just feels like Dominion with a board. Um, you're
Sure.
you not quite because
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not quite just buy. It is move as well, but you are just getting cards, and then but nice ways to siphon out your deck as well, and like cull cards and go to the base camp and get rid of those, get a special power that doesn't, you're really deck building and you're really racing.
Mm,
And my kids absolutely adore this game. And there's loads of variable setup, and they can. And I think this is it. Like a 4 or 5 year old can play this game, at least my kids can, because they're like, oh yeah, well that symbol does that. I'm like, yeah. And they're like, there's two of those symbols, so I can do it twice. I'm like, yeah, that's kind of it. And you know how to cut through grass, and you know how to go over rivers, and you know how to. You're like, well, I want to buy a giant paddle because I'm gonna. That bit's difficult. That's got 4 paddles on it, so I need a big paddle to get through there. And I'm like, yeah, you do. Like you are strategizing because the iconography is so good.
yeah.
But what I love about it is that it is a race and it's a proper race. My friend, who I play quite a lot with, we play reasonably heavy stuff. He was a bit cooler on it. He was like, I don't know. And I said, I was like, oh, I'm surprised you didn't like that so much. And he sort of crystallized for me what's so good about it. He said, you know that bit at the end of Ticket to Ride where you're desperately trying to get all your stuff out before you get minus points. I was like, yeah. He's like, it feels like that all the way through the game. I was like, yeah, that's the best bit. He's like, I don't like that. It's stressful. And I'm like, no, I love that. I love those moments of just like, ooh, gotta go. Ooh, and you're gonna beat me to this thing. Ooh. And it feels like that. It really feels like that. And yeah, I'm pleased that it made your 50. But I've played a heck of a lot of this. I really wish that Ravensburger Detroit version had the expansions because unfortunately it doesn't intersect with the old version. Yeah, unfortunately, probably not now, but if you're watching this in time, TK Maxx has the old version for 15 quid. It's pretty good value because it's really flipping fun.
It just is, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah. What was it? My 50? Yeah.
450. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Game number two of Fanboy. Um, well, like Concordia had dropped out of my top 10 because I hadn't played it in a while. I'd kind of exhausted myself on it a little bit. And actually, the same group of people as Concordia were like, okay, let's teach us something else. And this didn't hit for them really, kind of at all.
Mm,
But it just reminded me everything I love about Tapestry. Um, the from the production, which is so unnecessary, but makes it so necessary just for the experience. We keep talking about tactility and touch and kind of that sensory experience as well as just the cognitive one. It just keeps working, and I played a civilization I'd never played before, and it allowed me to do some weird stuff. And some of it works and some of it doesn't. And this game is broken and is not balanced, and they've done their best. And there's a new rule book that you can buy that balances everything for you. I'm honestly not going to buy it because I'm okay with it being a little weird. I really am. I didn't love this because every strategy was equally balanced and these things could
yeah.
work together. That helps because I play it loads, and I know for if you're going to play it every now and then, those swings are going to really frustrate you. But I just get to see some weird stuff, and I've never seen anybody try and pull that combination of things before because the core game, incredibly simple, which I love in games where the mechanic, the thing that you do is very simple. What you do is push
Yeah,
a cube up a track. That is all you do. But
yeah,
what, when, which track? What does that allow me to do? What does it let me do this time? How's that going to set me up for the next thing? That kind of depth. I don't like overly complex. Here's 17 steps to do one thing. Ugh.
hmm
But here's one small thing that could let you do 17 things. Love it. Love it so much. So Tapestry, my number six.
yeah. Well out of my 100 now. Well out. Yeah, it's fun. It is fun. Yeah, I think the cracks are too much for me now.
Whereas they are hilarious for me.
Schadenfreude.
Yeah.
Right, well, my number five, I think you were a little surprised earlier that it was this way round,
Yeah.
is the Big Daddy is War of the Ring. So this is the board and dice version of the card game that came, many, many years before. I don't know that they're that doesn't necessarily feel like, sorry, I'm pointing it, it's over there. It doesn't necessarily feel like a card game version of this. It almost feels like a card game that has the same world because they're both Lord of the Rings,
Yeah.
and there are elements that are familiar. For example, the so if you in the card game, if you have fewer cards than your opponents, you can pass, or if you're at a certain level, you can pass. And in this, if you have fewer dice, which are your actions, than your opponent, you can pass as well. So there's a couple of elements like that. You're like, oh yeah, I can see how but they're more like cousins than they are like brothers.
Yeah.
I think. Um, and I did go back and forth on this because I haven't played that, and I haven't played that in a little while actually. And I'm sort of like, well, actually, the card game's kind of easier to get to the table because I happen to be someone who plays with more people more often than I play with just one person, and particularly one person who I can give 4 hours of a two-player game to, if you're doing it quickly, and so it's almost an easier game to get to the table, the card game, but I'm still a board gamer. And I think that's the big difference to me. As much as I really enjoy the team play and like I can just about, oh look, I can see that the artwork, by the way, we haven't mentioned on War of the Ring, the card game, is very, very nice and is evocative and puts you in the sort of thing. It's not as good as here's a map, here's some little dudes and they're gonna go into a fight, and then here's a little ring bearer making his way, and like, you know, I'm still a board gamer. We've talked about tactility, but also sort of like immersiveness and that kind of thing. And I enjoy maps, and and you've talked about you're a Stonemeyer fanboy. I'm clearly a Tolkien fanboy at this point. I had a Tolkien game, a Lord of the Rings game in the top 15, in the top 10 to 5, and then in the 5 to 1. It's fine. You know, I'm just a board gamer. So that's why it's higher.
Yeah.
And it does have those same. I don't know how they've done it with both games actually, because often when you have a card game or a dice version or something of a game, one's better than the other. I like Bang the Dice game much better than Bang, and I mean, Roll and Race is one of the rarities where both work. Sometimes one feels like the ugly cousin of the other. These both work, and they both have like those real stand-up moments of, are we going to make it? Or they're just trying to conquer Minas Tirith again, which is the game you're talking about with the card game. Oh my goodness. But I still remember the game where I was playing with my mates, rushing with Gandalf to protect the Shire from the Witch King on the very last roll of the dice. And, they both have those major moments of, wow, look what's happened. And, if you're bought into the theme, particularly so, just one's on a board and on a bigger scale. And that's just a little bit more my jam. But they're both marvelous.
Yeah, it's again, having only played it once, I can't count it, but for me right now, the card game has kind of supplanted it, but I totally get that that's not a fair comparison because they are
Mm,
wildly different things, even though
mm,
thematic wise, narrative that they're achieving the same story, but even the story is very different because those
mm.
battlegrounds are different than where on the map shall I be focusing on. Actually, it's maybe 3 or 4 points instead of here's where you're going next, and let's do this thing. And then we resolve that, and let's do this next thing. It's much more sprawling, much more epic. And I think you've said before the card game is a team game that can work at two, whereas the board game is a two-player game that can work at teams, but why would you ever do those the other way around?
Correct. Yes. Yeah. Agreed. And it's worth saying as well, this is now the lowest War of the Ring has ever been, just marginally. But I think it's because of that sort of slight. They're like you said, very different. but occupy similar places in my heart. So, you know, yeah.
My number five um, has dropped. Very sad, very sad. Last year, I put out this video, and even in the video, and then for weeks afterwards, got a lot of stick from a lot of people being like, justify to me why this is your number one game. And I couldn't. It was a bit of a whim, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's no thanks. It's so good. This is for everybody. It fits them. It's not for two players. It's only for three up to seven. But oh boy, I love this game. It just hasn't come out so much this year. Maybe through shame of my own putting it at number one. But people kept making fun of me, and it was very sad. But I'm here to say it's still in my top 10. It's still number five. It is so good just as a filler or to play multiple times and that just be your night. Still that chance of nine cards not being in there, and can I get the
Mm,
consecutive numbers to collapse into only score the lowest number, or your wife going, "Now I'm going to stop you." Whatever it is that for such a simple game that plays in, well, the box says 20 minutes, I'd say 10. Because you're only going through a tiny stack of cards. It's just always a blast for me. I've met one person ever that was like, that's it. And I've played this with tens and tens and tens of people, nearing 100 people, and one person has been like, yeah. Everyone else is like, oh, cool. Minimum, like it's a positive reaction, and usually people are like, that's really cool. Let's keep
mm.
doing that. So no thanks. I don't care that it's ugly. I don't care about so many things because it's just such a simple game that there's nothing wrong with it. I will fight you because no thanks is excellent. And my number five.
Yeah. And I played it earlier. Come some friends around, and one of them is like, "I don't play games. I don't know why." And then he was like, with someone was supposed to be there. We're meant to have a conversation about something. Then turned up. He's like, "Suppose we could play a game if you really want to." And I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm gonna punish you." So I put no thanks on the table. And 2 rounds in, he was like, "Oh yeah." 4 rounds in, we finished the game, and he went, "So what else have you got?" I mean, that's pretty good actually. I was like, "Oh yeah." All right. Number four, the lowest this has ever been in the history of these lists
hmm
is Terraforming Mars.
hmm
I still love Terraforming Mars. I play it basically every day on an app version or it's a website. So I still like it. It still offers great theme versus mechanic choices, and it's great at bringing people in who wouldn't normally play games. They're like, "Oh, Mars! Oh, I like the Martian. Oh yeah, that's cool. That's fun. I like that." It's got a really solid economic engine and that kind of thing. It just and it's number four. Why am I quibbling about how bad this game is? It's great. I absolutely love it, and I have loved it for years. It's just not number one in every forever and ever and ever as it was for a while.
Yeah.
Um, and just seeing just a couple of maybe hairline fractures around the edges, having played quite as much as I have played. I don't think I've overplayed it. I just sort of gone, it's fine. There's just other things I just a hair more excited about on the whole. But golly, Terraforming Mars is a great game
And I think in
and beloved by many, many, many people.
yeah, and I think in the spirit of kind of what we said at the beginning of this whole venture, like I know for you, this does that satisfaction thing.
Mm,
Like that
yeah.
engine building, the tags to put things together, to that the cards directly inform what's on the board rather than it being a card game. It still feels like a board game. I just checked. It's my
Very much.
115. It's never going to be one that cracks it for me. It just I can't tell you why. I really can't. I've played it probably twice this year even, and it's just gone. I get why people like it. It just doesn't hit it for me. So
Mm,
it's for people watching, it's like pretend joy that it's slipping for Rick because Something fun and brings you joy, do it. And Rick's right.
Yeah,
So many people love this, and so there must be good reason. My number four is always around. I think it's only ever been number three or four. I would have to check further than that. I want to. What was it last year? Last year it was. Oh, I've got things the wrong way around. Oh boy. Oh boy, sorry, I've stacked my boxes in order and I've got the order wrong. And I'm now surprised that my number four is my number four and not my number three, but it's what the list says, and we can't go against what the list says. So let's swap those two over. I'll start again. My number four,
okay.
a
Ooh,
former
I'm
number
now
one.
curious.
A former number one. Love it so much. Have played it this year, taught it to people. I own so much of it and yet have played so little of it. It's one of those that I
Sure.
like
Yeah.
owning everything, but the core system, the company that makes it have just started a new crowdfunding for another version of it, a smaller version that plays quicker that you might like more because this theme doesn't bother you. This is the biggest box I own. This is Vindication. This is look at this. This is how much of it I own. It's too much, essentially, but I will keep putting out whatever they give me. I will keep getting it because I love it so much. The core system, again, I keep talking about the fact that I like themes. I do. You're much more thematically minded than I am. Um, but the core system of just moving some cubes around always sounds really boring, but just works. A bit of a sandbox, discovering places to stop being a scumbag is the theme. Like, that's just hilarious to me. But this does have what I said Tapestry didn't, in that um, you can go down one route and it's just as good as a different route.
Sure.
And you can do a little bit of everything and probably not do so well. You do kind of need to commit to one thing, and it gives you at the beginning of the game two secret quests that are just another way of scoring points that give you, and you only need to choose one of them a little bit into the game, at least the way I do it. I think experienced players, they make you pick at the beginning, but whenever I'm teaching it, I
Mm.
wait for the first quarter of the game, be like, now you've figured out how the game works, pick a direction. And that just kind of guides you because some games just go, here's loads of things. And you go, but what do I do first? This gives you that, gives you
Mm.
that story for yourself
Mm.
in a world that you're exploring. And then it's just an engine building, economic build things up to be able to buy the stuff or fight monsters or get relics or become a better human being, improving your traits or get pets or companions or improve your mount to be able to travel further. Like, it's all mechanical, but they just set it in a world to make it feel thematic. It's not
Mm.
at all. Like, the action does not correspond to what you're doing in the slightest, but it gives you a sense of a theme, and that suits me way better.
Mm.
Like,
Sure.
I like thematic games, I really do, but sometimes games can get bogged down in trying to be thematic, whereas something that gives me a sense of a theme, I get to enjoy that bit, but then do puzzles, and I like puzzles, so I just get to move these things around and do puzzles and ignore that thing, and then be like, oh, I've got this thing. That's cool. That's a cool story while I'm waiting for my turn, and then go, I'm going to do this little puzzle
Yeah,
again.
yeah.
So it's just constantly rich for me, and I will
Mm.
keep doing it out. I would probably explore more of it if more people liked it as much as I did, and so we got to delve into it more. But I'm usually teaching people, so it's usually the base game or a couple of the
Yeah,
little
yeah,
extra
yeah,
things.
yeah.
But I will still keep buying all their stuff because I love them for it. Um,
Mm.
Vindication, number four, apparently. Not number three like I thought it was. It's number four.
I also quite like the fact that you find not being a scumbag and becoming a better person hilarious. This explains a lot about you. Uh, all
Games
right,
are
number three.
fantasy.
Number three. Think this is maybe the highest it's been. I don't know. It's been around there. And honestly could be slightly higher if well, I'll tell you why in just a minute. But this is dropped. It's Brass Birmingham. Board Game Geek's current number one, and it's held there for a year because I said that last year as well. And I said then what I'll say now. I don't think it's for everyone. I
No.
don't think it should be number one game. I don't think it is the best game that ever there was. I think there's a whole bunch of stuff that people could play. Ticket to Ride is probably the best game for everyone. Um, this is not that. Has shades of Ticket to Ride. You're building train routes and canal routes and things like that. The I like economic games, and I like a little bit of theme, a little bit of story, and I love interconnectivity,
Yeah.
which this game does better than any other game on the planet. Um, I build a coal mine. You need coal. You have to use the nearest coal, which unfortunately is mine. So you're going to pay me money, but you don't want to pay me money. So maybe you build something else, but that's not really going to benefit you. Just yeah. Oh, and also like oh golly, what was it we said earlier? War of the Ring, the card game. I need to do an action, but I have to discard a card to do that action, but I need that card to do this thing. Oh, but it's really overwhelming. There's so many things going on, so many variables. I've only got 8 cards, and really that means it narrows my choices to really small. You can fit the whole rules on basically a two-sided playing card thing. It You can basically teach that. And then the you said about tapestry, the sort of actually what you do is not overly complex, but
Mhm.
the avenues of possibility are wild. And it's just one of those games that if again you have to have the right crowd. There's some people that can get bogged down in this and whatever, but if you have the right crowd, it is like liquid gold of a game. It just moves and it flows and it yeah I love this game. And just one of those games as well. They've never expanded, and I love that. I mean, in and of itself, it is kind of an expansion. It's a redo of Brass with some other stuff, but it's just like no, this is the game. It's good, isn't it? Number three, Brass Birmingham.
And Roxley just make good
Mm.
productions, like
Um,
unquestionably good.
yes,
So my number three, apparently, is a game that's always kind of sat around at number three or four.
yes.
You mentioned it last time.
Yeah.
I think this is one of those times that recency bias fractionally wins out. That's probably the distinction between uh, Vindication and Paladins of the West Kingdom. I've played this slightly more recently, and I played at the worst player count and absolutely loved it. Yeah,
Oh,
four
oh.
whilst teaching,
I mean, I guess that's probably okay. Actually, yeah.
and it was great. Like this is a two-player game. I'm sorry, it's a two-player game. Three's good, but it's two, three, four. But we played at four with somebody new, so it took time, and that's the drawback is if you're an AP prone person, you get bogged down, you're trying to analyze everything, you're going to take a while. But because it's that multiplayer solitaire, which works for some people, doesn't for others, but I love it. I just said about Vindication. I just like to get to do my little puzzle. And there's a little bit in the middle where everybody's competing for actions as they appear or the what the end game extra points are going to be. But the not quite the interconnectivity you mentioned for brass, but that to get red to matter, I need to do blue, which to get that to matter, I need to do black, which to
Yes,
get that to matter,
yes.
I need to do red. And so it's what's this wheel constantly going around of how do I manipulate these actions and these worker placement spaces with
Mm,
the meeples that I've got. And then on top of that, I know what you call kind of some of the heart of architects is the
mm.
corruption thing, which just really works for me.
Yes.
Tax and you accrue this, it gains you loads of money, but then every so often an inquisition happens, and if you've got the most tax, you're in trouble, and you get found out, and these bad things happen. You take a debt, which is minus points, unless you can redeem it, in which case it's bonus points. Like it's there's just lots of little things, and I know I've mentioned some games that are like, oh, that cognitive load is just that hair too much for me. This probably should be in that category, but for whatever reason, it just suits my brain so well that I've said it every time. When I first got it, I sat down, taught myself solo, probably as unadvisable as four, but I played it. It took me about 2 hours, and I just immediately did it again. And so it does not matter whenever I bring this out, even if the group ends up hating it, and I feel bad for that, but I've had an incredible time because I love the puzzle this game presents, and I've never been bored of it. I know I don't play games hundreds and hundreds of times, but this is probably 20 times plus, and I still love it as I did the first time. It's still an engaging
Mm,
puzzle every time. And I mentioned it ages ago. I think, in fact, Arc Nova, I said that like there's games that I just know how I like to play it. Like you could go down different sets of things and figure it out. I
mhm,
have two or three things that I go for, and I don't win with that because you need to semi respond to what's going on around you. But I just like doing my things, and so I just do my things, and I have a great time with it every time. Paladins of the West Kingdom, number three. And now that I've explained both games, I'm like, yeah, this was the right way around.
yeah. And can I just say as well, I don't think Paladins doesn't have heart. I just think
No,
that Architects has more.
sure.
But it's funny you should mention Arc Nova.
Hey,
It's number two.
oh golly, I've just realized what your number one is then.
Hello. Right. Don't give it away. This is number two. This is Arc Nova. Briefly at number one last year. And I think the reason it keeps Brass Birmingham off the two spot, if you like, is because almost countering what I just said, because there are expansions. Because it's still like I literally last week got the new maps. And every time something comes and you're like, ooh, that's a fresh puzzle. Okay, this is a zoo game where you are um, getting money from sponsorship to get animals, but they need to go into enclosures and uh, you know also do some. So you need to make money for your zoo, but also really you're interested in conservation. And there's two tracks running at the same time, and it's when those tracks cross over that you either score points or minus points. And there's this central puzzle element of five cards, five different actions at five different strengths, and where they are. If they're at level five, you can do a level five action, and obviously that's more powerful than a level one action. But once you use it, it goes down to the bottom, and so it's efficiency timing. It's sort of a little bit of polyomino. It's a little bit of um, uh, engine building. It's a little bit of set collection. It's a little bit of everything coming together and just making a juicy, juicy puzzle with a healthy dollop of theme and a little bit like I can't remember what game you were talking about earlier, where you were saying it doesn't necessarily, maybe it was Vindication, you don't necessarily need the theme to say that action looks like this representation because it's not, because who actually sits at their desk with like, well, I have this task to do today and it's at level four. So it becomes more powerful than action than if I'd done it on Tuesday. Doesn't make any sense. But it gives you the feeling it doesn't make any sense. Tuesday was only level two. Um, Sometimes it feels like that, but you see what I'm saying. But it has enough that you buy it, and the fact that there is new stuff coming out, and I think next year they'll probably bring out another cards expansion, and I'll be excited to see how that links together. And to be honest, each expansion they've done has tidied up some of the looser edges of the. So when it first came out, we were like, "Oh, the deck's too big. You don't get to find what you want." Okay, first expansion. Oh, look, now they've added more stuff, but it moves through faster. You get to search what you're looking for, and everything just feels that little bit tighter as it's gone along. And so it is. It's just a great puzzle, and is my absolute favorite solo game. It's basically the only thing I really play solo. I'll get out when my wife's watching a film or something. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to just see, because again, it's a race element. Can I get the conservation and the ticket sales to cross in 27 turns? And that's a nice puzzle. It's a nice challenge. And if you want to, you can do that three times on the spin and see if you can get a positive or a negative score. And I've done that a few times and just shout to my wife, -30 tonight, darling. She's like, oh dear, those poor animals. It's a treat. It's lovely. I'm pleased you like it. I'm pleased it's grown on you. Um, yeah, just fab, just fab.
Great. I hope that my number two means that you might know, but don't spoil my number one because it's a new number one. My number two, the final of the fanboy,
Mm.
is Scythe. Um, it is so good, and this is my number two gaming experience of the year. We played a six-player game, again with a new person and someone that hadn't played in a long time, so still with that teaching element. But and normally I would say this is like a four-player game just for the kind of time length and how much conflict and whatnot I wanted to be getting on with. But I've done a couple of 5 or 6 player games throughout my time with it, and almost in that War of the Ring way, they're just an epic experience. Like if I'm teaching
Mhm.
5 new people, it's going to be a bogged down, slow experience. But when enough of us have enough of a key and we're maybe only just helping out 1 or 2 people, then it just flowed so well. Probably still only got it done in like 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours, which
Mm.
6 player game of this is impressive. But just that very simple. I move my token onto a different space and do that column of actions. The upgrade thing you mentioned last time on I make this thing better, but I make this thing cheaper. So good. And again, my way of playing this game is I'm going to stay on my peninsula and you leave me alone whilst I do my own little farm. Whereas other people are like, no, I'm going to jump in your face and we're going to fight. And it's going to be bad for one of us, maybe both. Who knows? Because I've actually hurt your people and now I'm less popular, scoring less points at the end of the game. Everything is kind of a push and pull against itself and everything else. And the world is beautiful and the stories are there if you want them. Again, that sense of theme, not here's a theme, let's play in this theme. It's here's a world and the event cards, which I don't care about. They give you a little thing or they give you a little bit more, but cost you something minor, but have a really cool picture on. And it's like, do you want to steal these cattle? And it's like, there are cattle on the card, like just these tiny moments of story
Mm.
threaded in that go,
Yeah,
this is
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah,
so much fun. And then sitting back,
yeah, yeah.
watching everybody else doing the Cold War thing just really works for me. Like, oh, I can see where they're maneuvering because they're going to come after you. And then we've totally forgotten about this other person that can just pop up in your home base and do whatever you want. It's like, oh, goodness, like you're just constantly watching everything. We played with 2 of the expansion factions. So the one that lays traps as they go, and the other one placing flags so that if you don't take their stuff, they actually score double for it. And it's just, and they've got a pig. That's just cool.
Box.
Yeah. It's all of it's just a lot of fun. And it's what now, 8 years old? And still, in terms of that satisfaction, this is so familiar to me now that I just know it's going to give me that satisfaction every time that I play. And so it's still fighting to be number one, still in that mix of always in the top three. I don't think it's ever dropped lower than three. It's number two this year. It's just what it is. Scythe, love it so much.
I'll be honest, I only listened to about half of that because I'm racking my brains as to what your number one can be. There's some left field options in my mind, so we'll see what it is. But you feel like you rumbled my number one, which
You
is
do
fine.
like a race game.
I do like the race games, and this is the best race game I have ever played by a long flipping chalk. What? Yeah, I mean, you've cited it more than once as being your favorite gaming experience of the year.
Third, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fine. It was my favorite gaming experience of the year. They released an expansion this year. By the way, this is Heat. This is a racing game, and it's not really a deck builder, it's deck management game where you're trying to push your luck with the Heat cards of the title that make you go faster, that give you powers, let you go around corners faster, go up several gears and things like that, or go down gears if you need to because you're hurtling into a corner. Um, but when you do that, they become a dead card in your hand. So you want to try and slow down a bit and cool down. And so you're just doing managing. It's really just a card management. If it didn't have the board, my goodness, this would be a very, very dull game. But it's not. It's a very, very fun game. And then there's sort of great player interactivity with slipstreaming and going right. If you can time it right and you end up right next to someone, you get to swing forward 2 spaces, and that doesn't cost you go around corners. And so if you can time it right, the time you've been alluding to was the first corner we played. You went hurtling past the corner way too fast, didn't spin out because your engine had enough heat in it to just about hold you on the road. And all of that, I mean, obviously it's just a card that goes down, but that feeling comes out of like, oh my goodness, this feels just like nuts and bolts and wheels. it gives you that sort of adrenaline rush. Um, so that it has that, and then you spent the rest of the game trying to just keep the car together, but then you managed to sneak up to like third place or something like that, because and it was that you and I need to reassess this. I actually really like it, which is great. Um, but for my birthday this year, we had six other people and myself, so seven players, and we did the tournament mode where you play three games on the spin, and there's special cards. It's like a campaign, like, oh, you're playing in Britain. Hey, you get if you do this, you get a special power, and then you get single use like power up cards, sponsorship cards if you do something cool or the specific rule of the thing. And we played, 6 hours or something like this. I don't know. It was a long time. It was sort of 12:30. Everyone's a little bit doolally. And on the final corner, someone else had won the final race, but second and third was me and this other guy, and we were competing for the championship. And he'd beaten me to the corner. But in the new maps, there's chicanes, and he got caught between the two chicanes. And I had a special card which gave me better tires, which meant I could just drift past it. And I literally stood up and was like in his face, and he started weeping into someone's shoulder. It and it's just my absolute go-to. I've said a couple of times, I end up with sort of five, six people in a game session fairly regularly, and I'm often teaching. And this is one where I'm just like, I'm just not bored of it.
Yeah.
I just want to play it, and I want the maps that are coming next year. And it's just really fun. And basically, everyone I've played with has gone, that's just really fun, isn't it? I like that. I like blowing up and getting stressed out and going fast and getting slipstream, and very, very accessible and very, very, very fun. And my number one, I think I just love playing it. Heat, pedal to the metal.
I can't argue with you. I can't. I've argued with you in the past with other games you've picked, but I can't. It's great. It really is. And yeah, I was last for the whole first lap, I think, and then got to third because I'd caned it very quickly, was ahead very early, and then was dead. And then just played a bit safe, but then revved up, chanced it a couple of times in the last round, and suddenly, boom, you did it. And it's like, yeah, don't care that I didn't win. I didn't lose, but actually it was like third of six. Like that's super satisfying. My number one, the most satisfying game. What do I love in games? Cards. Love cards. Love cards. I love simple action systems. Love them. Turns out, love an engine builder. Love an engine builder. I love a sense of a theme where the theme doesn't really matter, but I look back and go, cool, I built something great. Earth, baby!
Oh, of course it is. I was like, ancient knowledge beyond the sun. What's happening here? Ah, ah. Wow.
This does everything I love. Absolutely everything. It might not stay number one. That's okay. That's okay because it's still quite new to me. I have ordered the expansion that's coming whenever that comes, and it's coming with new mechanisms that I don't care about. I would be okay if this was a brass that just never had anything new. You know what I'm getting the expansion for? Fancy pieces. I want to make this an even better tactile experience because I love playing this so much. You're just making a grid of plants. But you're doing that with cubes that don't really matter, but these little beautiful little stacks of wooden things that look like trees, that's a lot of fun. Everything scores points, and as you play things, they have different colored lines on, and when somebody plays the corresponding action, so we talked about Race for the Galaxies, like somebody gets to do the good version of the action, and everyone else gets to do the little bit of the action. Like, it's just a lot of fun. What do I choose? What can I just count on somebody else doing to top me up to get that little thing to let me do this other thing? But they played the green thing, so now I get to trigger all of my green powers. So good. I'm actually building up a yellow economy this time, so I have so much soil, or I've got a massive compost pile, so I'm scoring 50 points from things I didn't even play. I just threw them away and I got points for it. What a great thing. Or actually, the last time we played, I built up an engine where I put loads of things in the compost and then could do stuff with my compost. So actually, yes, I was still building my tableau, but and I only won because somebody else was trying to eke out that extra turn, but they should have won. If they'd ended the game with a lesser card, they'd have won. But they were like, let me chance it just for this one thing that lets me score all these points. And I ended the game by building my thing. And it just great. I don't know if they had a great time because they lost. But it just every time I play this, and it's only about 5 or 6 times.
Hmm.
So it doesn't compare to the rest of my list in terms of how often I've played it to know how deep my appreciation and satisfaction of this goes. But thus far, every time it just scratches the itch I have perfect.
Hmm.
I've said for years in these videos, there's always that kind of hunt for that perfect game. This isn't it. It's not it. But right now, if I want to be satisfied by playing a game, this is going to do it without fail right now. And so, Pub Meeple has its weirdnesses because you put th weird things up against itself, but you essentially cheat with the number one because you constantly tell it, I'm
Yes.
always going to pick this game no matter what you throw
Yes.
at me. And
That's
you've
it.
almost
That's it.
decided that before you start. And so I knew this before I did the list, that this was my number one. Some
Yeah.
hard choices came up. That top five is always I don't know quite which way this game will go. But I every time I just came back to it that every time I've played, no matter who with, no matter what player count, we've played it at low, medium at the full, kind of five currently. I think it goes up to
Mm.
six with the expansion, maybe. Um, it's just worked for me. And it's got that wingspan thing of if I don't care about what I'm doing or I'm losing, I'm going to read facts about plants and have just a nice time looking at this very aesthetically pleasing experience. Everything about this satisfies me. And I'm sure it's got holes and cracks that everyone will shout at me about. Right now, I don't care.
Yeah.
Earth baby. It just does it for me right
Yeah.
now. And I would love for you to get it back to the table and see what you think again.
Yeah, yeah, and it does as well what we've alluded to a couple of times in this list of the sort of it is thematic, but the actions aren't necessarily linked to the theme, but they get you in, and they, like you say, yeah, it's got that the wingspan thing is a good reference point of like, oh yeah, sequoias, they're that tall, they're huge, that sort of thing is really fun, and you're absolutely right about the sort of the number one cheat on Pub Meeple. Like I didn't actually cheat. I didn't go into it thinking this will be my number one, but I did get to it and go. I had to make a choice between this and whether it was Arknova or 10 from Mars or whatever. I went, oh, I didn't realize I was here with my heart, but I'm okay with that because, like you say, does heat satisfy every time it hits the table? Yes, it does.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know, great. No, both. Oh, maybe is this the first time ever we've both been happy with each other's number ones?
possibly. I am a cantankerous
Nice.
old man. Um,
And the first time we've not had crossover in the top 10.
yeah, yeah, because you dropped side like a moron. So
And
that
Earth.
that is it for another year. Thank you so much for watching. We will in all likelihood be back next year to make each other mad again. But I've had a lot of fun. We hope you have a nice break and a new year that satisfies, seeing as that's been the theme. But that was a weird thing to say, so I probably won't say it again. But in the meantime, do like, share, follow, subscribe, bell, things. Who knows? But in the meantime, I've been Dieter. This is Rick for Win Some Lose More. We'll see you again. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Goodbye.